I'm Holly Steinlage, and I am a child nutrition consultant here with KSDE. And this morning, we're going to cover, is this meal reimbursable, the lunch version. Yesterday morning, we had a webinar on the breakfast version, and today we're going to get a little more advanced and cover lunch, so a few more components. And just so you guys know, this webinar will be recorded and it'll be put on our online training portal. So if you need to leave early or anything, have any technical difficulties, just know it'll be posted there and you can review it for yourself or any other staff members who might want this training. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and dig in. So is this meal reimbursable lunch? Our objectives for the class are that by the end of this training, you guys will learn what comprises a reimbursable lunch in the National School Lunch Program, practice recognizing reimbursable lunches, and then identify methods for communicating reimbursable lunch meals. Because I'm sure, as you know, recognizing and serving a reimbursable lunch meal is really important for your program integrity. So our modules today, we have 4 modules. The first is going to be identifying lunch meal standards. So this will just give us a good overview of the lunch meal pattern. Then we'll go into recognizing a reimbursable meal, and that will have some activities with it. Then we will talk about communicating reimbursable meals, and finally we'll go into recognizing and communicating reimbursable alternate meals. And so Module 2 and Module 4 will have some activities to kind of help us get a little more comfortable recognizing reimbursable meals. So our first section is identifying lunch meal standards. And your nutrition standards for school meals are based upon the current dietary guidelines for Americans, and this provides up-to-date information on nutrition and health. And the dietary guidelines for Americans and the nutrition standards for school meals have requirements on food components, as well as dietary specifications for calories, saturated fat, trans fat, and sodium. So within the lunch meal pattern, we have 5 components. We've got fruits, vegetables, meat alternate, grains, and milk. So at breakfast, it's just grains, milk, and fruits, but at lunch, it expands to add in those vegetables and meat alternate. So any planned lunch meal must have those 5 components. So we'll go through each of those components. The first one is the fruit component, and fruit has to be offered daily at lunch. It can be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried, and it's counted in cups or portions of cups. The minimum amount of fruit that can be credited is 1/8 of a cup, so you can't credit anything less than 1/8 of a cup. And to simplify portioning and self-service, most fruits are served as 1/4 cup or 1/2 cup portions. If dried fruit is served, a 1/4 cup portion of dried fruit credits as a 1/2 cup fruit component. So I always say, think about a 1/4 cup of raisins. If we expanded those raisins back into their original form as a grape, they would probably actually be a 1/2 cup of fruit. You can credit 100% fruit juice as toward the fruit component, but it is limited to no more than 50% of the fruit servings offered over the week. Our next component is the vegetable component, and vegetables again have to be offered daily at lunch. They can be fresh, frozen, canned, or dried. And within the vegetable component group, there are 5 vegetable subgroups that have to be offered. So we've got dark green, red orange, bean peas, starchy, and other. So not only do you have to meet daily requirements for vegetables and weekly requirements, but you've got weekly total requirements for each of those 5 subgroups of vegetables. And like fruits, your vegetables are counted as cups or portions of cups, and the minimum amount of vegetable that can be credited is 1/8 of a cup. So just like fruit, it has to be at least 1/8 of a cup. And to simplify portioning and self-service, most vegetables are planned and offered as 1/4 cups, 1/2 cups, or 1 cup serving sizes. And with leafy greens are a little different, where a 1 cup portion of leafy greens credits as a 1/2 cup of vegetables. So when you think of a 1 cup serving of spinach, if we mashed that down, it would probably only be a 1/2 cup of vegetables because they're leafy, there's so much air in between each piece. Vegetable juice can also be served in a 1 cup portion of so vegetable juice can also be served, but just like your fruit juice, it's limited to no more than 50% of the vegetable servings offered over the week. So our third component at lunch is the meat alternate component. And foods in the meat alternate component include pork, poultry, fish, dry beans and peas, cheese, peanut butter, yogurt, eggs, nuts, and seeds. And it's also allowed to credit towards the meat component in a reimbursable meal, shelf-stable dried and semi-dried meat, poultry and seafood snacks, and yogurt made from soy. So lots of different foods fall under the meat alternate component. And meat alternates are counted as ounce equivalents. And the minimum amount that can be credited is 0.25 ounce equivalents. So you've always got to round your meat alternate down to the closest 0.25 ounce equivalent. And to simplify portioning, most meat alternates are planned and served in 1 or 2 ounce equivalents. Our next component is the grains component, and grains include rice, bread, pasta, breading, rolls, buns, tortilla chips, tortillas, and muffins. And your grains are counted as ounce equivalents as well, just like the meat alternate, and they have a minimum credited amount of 0.25 ounce equivalents. So again, you're always going to round your ounce equivalents of grains down to the nearest 0.25. And your grains offered have to comply with the 50% whole grain rich requirement. And grain-based desserts may also be counted as ounce equivalent grains on the menu and can be either enriched grains, whole grains, or a combo of enriched and whole, as long as at least 50% of all grains are whole throughout the week. So of all the grains you offer throughout the week, at least 50% have to be whole grain rich. And grain-based desserts cannot exceed 2 ounce grains equivalents over the course of the week. So we'll elaborate on that whole grain rich requirement a little bit more. As a menu planner, you must assure that daily and weekly minimums are met for your grains at each age group and that meals planned stay within calorie ranges. So 50% or more of the grains credited on a weekly basis must be whole grain rich. For example, if you served a total of 8 ounce equivalents of grains over the course of the week, then at least 4 ounce equivalents of those grains have to be whole grain rich. And since the 50% whole grain rich requirement is a weekly requirement and not a daily requirement, you do have some flexibility when it comes to offering grains in the program. And then that remaining 50%, so you've got 50% whole grain rich, the remaining 50% has to be enriched grains. And then our final component is the milk component, and the milk component grouping is fluid milk. And a minimum of 2 varieties of fluid milk have to be offered at lunch, with at least 1 type offered as unflavored. So your milk variety could include low-fat flavored and unflavored milk, as well as non-fat or skim flavored and unflavored milk. So you've got to offer a variety, but at least one of those has to be unflavored. And the option to offer low-fat or non-fat flavored milk in the school meal program is part of changes that were intended to broaden choices for student customers and encourage more milk consumption. And this flexibility applies to school year 1920, and it began on July 1st. So let's look at the planned minimum meal requirements for daily requirements and weekly requirements. So you've got daily and weekly minimum requirements in each of the component groupings. And it's the responsibility of the menu planner to make sure that each component is provided and the minimum amount for each of your age grade groups. And then again, 50% or more of the grains credited on a weekly basis must be whole grain rich. And the chart on the slide shows the similarities between grades K through 5 and 6 through 8. And it demonstrates how a menu planner can develop a menu that meets meal pattern requirements for a broader K through 8 program. So if we look at this chart, we've got the K through 5 daily minimums in column 2, and then the 6 through 8 daily minimums in column 4. And you'll see that they've got the same daily requirements. K through 5 and 6 through 8 have the same daily requirements in every component. And then if we look at the weekly minimums here, the only difference is in the meat alternate. 6 through 8 needs 1 ounce equivalent more. So they need 9 ounce equivalents over the week versus 8 ounces for K through 5. So because these are so similar, a menu planner can choose to serve the same menu for all grades K through 8, and then you just want to make sure you meet this higher weekly minimum of meat alternate. So you'd go for the 6 through 8 weekly minimum of meat alternate. And that can definitely simplify things for menu planners and staff. And now we've got the 9 through 12 daily and weekly minimums for each of the components. And you'll see that we did bump up a little bit in the daily minimums. So fruit, now they have to have 1 cup instead of just a half cup. Vegetables, 9 through 12, have to have 1 cup instead of 3/4 cup. And then the meats and the grains, they've got to have 2 ounce equivalents each, rather than the 1 ounce equivalent that was required for K through 8. So then their weekly minimums are also a little bit higher because of that. So there's enough difference here that you would not be able to offer the same menu between all grades K through 12. But you do have the option to offer the same menu for K through 8, and then you'd have a separate one for 9 through 12. So we've talked about each of the components separately, but one thing that can be tricky is dishes that are mixed components, where they're comprised of maybe a meat alternate and grain, or maybe the vegetable component is also included in there. And so main dishes often include items from more than one component category. So some examples might be a sandwich that has both meat alternate and the grain component. Or a casserole could include the meat alternate, grain, and vegetable components. And meal planners have to communicate how a mixed component dish contributes to the required meal pattern for lunch. And your meal component information for a main dish with mixed components must be communicated with staff, particularly those who serve meals and those who work at the point of sale. And your meal contribution information for a main dish with mixed components must be communicated to students at the beginning of the line so they can more easily select a reimbursable meal. And we'll go through some examples of how you can communicate that to students, I think in Module 3. But to determine how a main dish with mixed components contributes to the component requirements for a reimbursable lunch meal, you would need to use a CN label, a product formulation statement, or a recipe component calculation. And the reason we need those additional references is because by looking at a serving size of casserole, we can't tell how many ounce equivalents of grain or meat or vegetable there are in there. But if we look at the recipe breakdown or possibly a CN label or a product formulation statement, we're able to determine what those component contributions are. We have had some updates in meal pattern policies, and USDA is allowing the crediting of foods in nutrition programs that were not previously credited. So one of those is shelf-stable, dried and semi-dried meat, poultry, and seafood snacks, and those can now credit towards the meat component in a reimbursable meal. And these shelf-stable products can be helpful to planning for on-site meals, maybe grab-and-go meals or off-site meals such as field trips and picnics. And then Food and Nutrition Services is also allowing crediting of pasta made with vegetable flour, coconut, hominy, popcorn, surimi seafood, tempeh, corn masa, corn flour, and cornmeal. And allowing these products to credit is just intended to provide additional variety and enhance the appeal of the meals. And it also affirms USDA's commitment to give schools more control over their food service decisions and greater ability to offer wholesome and appealing meals that reflect local preferences. Another policy update allows providing menu planning flexibilities on sodium limits, and meal planners now have more time for gradual sodium reduction, and they can retain sodium target 1 through the end of school year 2023-24. And compliance with sodium target 2 is required in school year 24-25, and then the final target that would have gone into effect in school year 22-23 has been removed. So again, some more flexibility. So now that we've got a good introduction on each of the components and what makes up the meal pattern for lunch, we are going to go into recognizing a reimbursable meal. And as we talked about, this is important to ensure that meals selected by students qualify for federal and state reimbursement under the requirements for the National School Lunch Program. So why is it important to select a reimbursable meal? If a complete reimbursable meal is selected, the student is charged the more economical unit meal price. However, if a student were to select a meal that was not reimbursable, the items they select are priced separately as Smart Snacks a la carte. A la carte purchases are typically more expensive and do not provide the full nutritional benefits of a complete meal. Selection of a reimbursable meal is also important to school nutrition programs. Your nutrition program receives money from the federal and state governments for every qualifying meal served to students. And reimbursement for meals that meet the minimum requirements for reimbursement are received for meals in the free, reduced, and paid meal categories. So not only is choosing a reimbursable meal beneficial to the student because they'll receive that unit price, but it's also important to the school and the district to ensure that you receive your federal and state reimbursement for that meal. All program staff have a role when it comes to planning, recognizing, and claiming reimbursable meals. Menu planners use component documentation and production sheets to make sure that all the required components are offered to students on a daily and weekly basis. On-site program supervisors will communicate how the menu items contribute to the component groupings to support service and selection of reimbursable meals. Food production staff follow standardized recipes to ensure menu items contribute to the component groupings as planned. And then serving staff use proper serving utensils to ensure the planned yield is achieved and students receive the amount intended for their dietary needs. Serving staff are also in a position to encourage students to select a reimbursable meal. And then finally, your point of sale personnel determine if the meal selected by the student is a reimbursable meal, and if not, they will suggest options to complete the meal. So you can see there's lots of staff involved in making sure students receive a reimbursable meal, from menu planning to the final point of sale person. So in a serve style of service, a reimbursable meal contains all 5 components in the amounts required by the lunch meal pattern. And since all menu items must be served and taken, a serve style of service tends to have a higher food cost. While a serve style of service makes serving and selection of meals efficient, it sometimes leads to excessive plate waste when student customers discard the unwanted menu items placed on their plate. And serve programs can also create dissatisfaction since customers cannot choose the foods they prefer to eat. So with serve, the students must take all of the planned menu items. And what that can sometimes cause is higher plate waste, higher food costs, and sometimes it can cause dissatisfaction since you've got to take all of the menu items. In offer versus serve, students can take all of the components offered, or they can decline certain components if desired. And at the minimum, a reimbursable meal under offer versus serve must include a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 full additional components. An offer versus serve is required for grades 9 through 12 at lunch, and while it's optional for grades K through 8, school nutrition programs are strongly encouraged to operate an offer versus serve style of service for all of their grades K through 12. And that's because an offer versus serve style of service improves customer satisfaction, reduces customer plate waste, and provides opportunities for program operators to reduce their food costs. So here we've got a full planned reimbursable meal offered to K through 8 age grade. And in order for a lunch meal to reimbursable, all the components of a full meal must be available to each student for the entire service period. A full component is the daily minimum amount required for an age grade group. So remember that full component is the daily minimum amount required for an age grade group. A reimbursable meal in an offer versus serve style of service requires the student customers to take at least a half cup of fruit or vegetable and 2 additional full components. So in offer versus serve, as we can see in this last column, they have to take a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So here we've got our 5 different components. They've got to have that half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So they've got to take 2 ounce equivalents grain or 2 ounce meat alternate, a cup of vegetable, a cup of fruit, or a cup of milk if they were 9 through 12. So a milk component has to be offered at all of your lunch meals, and in a serve style of service, the milk has to be taken. In offer versus serve, the milk can be declined. And milk components are easy to recognize because most, if not all, school nutrition programs are offering milk in an 8 fluid ounce carton or bottle. And 1 8 fluid ounce carton or bottle of milk is 1 milk component. And as we talked about earlier, at least 2 varieties of fluid milk have to be offered at meal service, with at least 1 variety being unflavored. And these options could be 1% white, non-fat white, 1% flavored, or non-fat flavored. Next, we've got the meat alternate component, and this component is typically served in a main dish menu item, which contains the full component requirement. So some examples might be a hamburger patty, chicken nuggets, or meat sauce. And the meat alternate component can also be bundled, meaning that more than 1 meat alternate menu item would comprise the full component requirement. So some examples might be yogurt bundled with a cheese stick, peanut butter and jelly sandwich bundled with a cheese stick. So we don't get that full component, the full meat alternate component with 1 item, so from the yogurt, so we've got to bundle it with something else to get that full component. And then we've got the grain component, and the grain component can be served as 1 menu item to meet the full component requirement. And some examples might be a 2 ounce bun, 1 cup of cooked pasta, or 1 cup of cooked rice. And the grain component can be served as 2 or more different menu items to meet the full component requirement, just like we talked about with that meat alternate. Some examples might be serving a pasta salad with a dinner roll, or the breading on a main dish item and then pairing that with a serving of rice, or a soft-shelled taco and tortilla chips. So again, kind of bundling those items together to get to the full component. And as we've discussed, just remember that 50% or more of the grains credited on a weekly basis must be whole grain rich. Fruit and vegetable components are more challenging to determine since fruits and vegetables come in many forms. A half cup of fruit or vegetable could include a half cup of canned or frozen or cut up fresh fruit, a 1/4 cup of dried fruit, 4 ounces of fruit or vegetable juice, a half cup of vegetable, 1 cup of green leafy vegetables, or a half cup mixture of fruit and vegetables. So we talked about how dried fruit, if we expand it, it's going to be larger than its initial serving size. So a 1/4 cup of dried fruit will actually credit as a half cup. And then with those leafy greens, leafy vegetables, if we were to smash those down, they would actually credit, 1 cup would credit as a half cup. And then fruit and vegetable juice, you just need 4 ounces or a half cup to credit it as a half cup of fruit or vegetable. So whenever you are trying to determine whether the half cup fruit or vegetable requirement has been met, there are a few questions you can ask. And just remember that fruit and vegetables that are pre-portioned in half cup increments or served in half cup increments by program staff are very, very easy to recognize for crediting. So if it's pre-portioned or served in a half cup increment, it's going to be easier to recognize that that is the actual half cup of fruit or vegetable. So when trying to determine if a tray has the half cup of fruit or vegetable, you could ask, does the portion fill a square on the tray? Do the leafy green vegetables slightly overfill a square on the tray? Does the portion fill a 4-ounce spoodle? Or are there several fruits and vegetables selected that total a half cup or more as a whole? So I always try to picture a half cup serving utensil and then think about whether the fruits and vegetables on that tray would fill that half cup serving utensil. So there are some fruits that are difficult to scoop or to determine whether it's actually a half cup by looking at them. And one guide that can be really helpful is the web-based interactive food buying guide, as it can calculate how to credit hard to scoop fresh fruits on the menu. So some examples of half cup serving size of hard to scoop fresh fruits include whole fruits like a banana, a peach, a pear, or a plum. 1 whole piece of that fruit would be a half cup. Apples are a little different, whereas 1 whole apple actually credits as 1 cup. So if you had a half of an apple, that would be a half cup of fruit. Kiwis, you'd need 3 to 4 halves of a kiwi to credit as a half cup. 7 cherries to credit as a half cup. 7 large or 15 medium grapes. 2 small clementines, and a half of a grapefruit. So those are just a few examples of fruits that are obviously going to be difficult to scoop or difficult to determine if it's a half cup. And you can look these up, as I said, in the food buying guide. They have, under more information, they'll have some tips on how much would credit as a half cup. Same thing with vegetables. You can go to the food buying guide to determine what size of a serving size of these difficult to scoop vegetables you would need to credit as a half cup. So for corn on the cob, you'd need 2 cobettes or 1 medium ear. For celery or carrots, it would be about 6 sticks. Cucumber or zucchini, same thing, about 6 sticks. 2 hash brown patties, 6 whole cherry tomatoes, or 8 slices of an 8-inch thick tomato slice. So again, these are just a few examples, and if you have a particular vegetable that you need to determine what comprises a half cup, you can look in the food buying guide for that guidance. So here, as you can see, there are multiple ways to meet the half cup minimum required serving size, and here are just some suggestions. So you can see if a tray came through with these different combinations, it would credit as that required half cup of fruit or vegetable under offer versus serve. So if we look in this top left one, we've got a 1/4 cup of grapes and a half cup of fresh spinach. So if a student came with that on their tray, that would count as the half cup fruit or vegetable because we've got 1/4 cup of grapes. And remember, fresh leafy greens credit as half their volume. So that half cup of fresh spinach actually credits as a 1/4 cup. So a 1/4 cup plus a 1/4 cup equals a half cup. Mashed potatoes, that's easy. If they've got a half cup of mashed potatoes on their tray, we're good to go. Same thing with the refried beans. A half cup would meet the half cup fruit or vegetable requirement. Here we've got a 1/4 cup of cucumbers and a 1/4 cup of baby carrots, and we would add those together to equal a half cup of vegetables. 1 whole banana credits as a half cup of fruit, so that would work. Here we've got a little more tricky, a half cup of romaine, an 1/8 cup of chickpeas, and an 1/8 cup of onion. And so if we add those 2 1/8 cups together, we've got a 1/4 cup. And then remember, our leafy greens credit as half their volume, so that half cup of romaine would actually credit as a 1/4 cup. So add that with our 1/4 cup from the chickpeas and onions, and we've got a half cup. Half an orange credits as a 1/4 cup of fruit, because a whole orange would credit as a half cup. So we've got a 1/4 cup from the orange and then a 1/4 cup from the grape tomatoes. So that tray is good. And then 1 fresh peach. If you remember, most whole fruit is going to credit as a half cup of fruit. So we'd have our half cup of fruit here from the peach. So this can be tricky when you're first learning to identify whether a tray has a half cup fruit or vegetable, but once you get the hang of it, it's pretty easy to spot that half cup and then determine if they've got the 2 other full components. And we will practice that here in a little bit. So once a student has selected the half cup of fruit or vegetable as required, they can choose another fruit or vegetable as one of their other 2 required components. And if the student chooses to select an additional serving of a fruit or vegetable and count it as one of the other 2 required components, the additional component choice must be a full serving size. So if you remember from earlier, we said that in offer versus serve, you have to have a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 other full components. So if one of those other components is going to be a fruit or vegetable as well, then it needs to be the full serving size. So if we look at this top example, a student selects a half cup vegetable and wants to select another component from fruit. So remember, for K through 8, the full minimum daily requirement of fruit is a half cup. So that student would need to take another half cup of fruit. For 9 through 12, the minimum daily requirement is 1 cup. So the student needs to take 1 cup of fruit. So remember, it's the full intended serving size, full minimum daily requirement. So 9 through 12, they'd have to take a cup. In this second example, the student selects a half cup of fruit and wants to select another component from vegetables. So if you remember, K through 8, the minimum daily required vegetable serving size is 3/4 cup. So they've got to take 3/4 cup of vegetable. And then in 9 through 12, it's 1 cup daily required. So they've got to take 1 cup of vegetable. And again, we'll practice this here in a little bit. So we've got this handy point of service flow chart that I want to look at before we go through this first activity. So up here it's talking about the 5 components in a school lunch. So we've discussed, we've got fruit, vegetable, meat alternate, grains, and milk. In a serve program, the students have to receive all 5 components. In offer versus serve, the students have to take a half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So in offer versus serve, we've got a tray that contains all 5 components. That's a reimbursable meal. The students in offer versus serve can take everything, or they can just take the minimum required. If they take everything, it's a reimbursable meal. What if the tray contains a half cup fruit or vegetable total and at least 2 more components? That's the minimum amount they need, so a meal is reimbursable. So just always remember they need that half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. This tray has got it. What if a tray contains 3 components but no fruit or vegetable? That is not a reimbursable meal because they've got to have a half cup of fruit or vegetable. So what are we going to do with that meal? We'll ask the student to select at least a half cup of fruit or vegetable to prevent a la carte charges. All right, so scenario 4, the tray contains a half cup fruit or vegetable and 1 other component. That's not a reimbursable meal because although they've got the half cup of fruit or vegetable, they've only got one other full component and they need two. So we'll ask the student to select one more meal component to prevent a la carte charges. All right, so what if a tray contains a half cup fruit or vegetable, two full components, and one additional half serving of food? Key words here is that it contains a half cup fruit or vegetable and two full components. If it's got at least that, then they can have additional foods if they want. But they've got the minimum, so the meal is reimbursable. So now we're going to just go through some scenarios here. So we've got a K through 8 menu. And if we were face-to-face in person, we would brainstorm these together. But I'm just going to go through and discuss some minimum meal options that would be available with this menu. So we've got chicken nuggets. They are 2 ounce equivalents meat alternate and 1 ounce equivalent grains, mashed potatoes at a half cup, broccoli at a quarter cup, a dinner roll at 1 ounce equivalent grains, sliced peaches at a half cup, and milk at 1 cup. So first, it looks like this menu meets meal pattern requirements because we've got at least 1 ounce of meat alternate. We've got at least 1 ounce equivalent of grains. We actually have 2 of each of those. We've got 3/4 cup of vegetables from our mashed potatoes and broccoli. And then we've got a half cup of fruit and then a cup of milk. So our planned menu meets meal pattern requirements. Now we just need to make sure that students take a reimbursable meal. So if a student took a half cup of sliced peaches and chicken nuggets and a dinner roll, that would be a reimbursable meal option because first of all, we're checking for that half cup of fruit or vegetable, got it, and then we need 2 full components. So we've got that from the chicken nuggets, which have a full component of meat alternate, and they also have a full component of grains. So then we've got a dinner roll on top of that. It's a reimbursable meal. What if a student came through with a half cup of mashed potatoes and chicken nuggets and milk? So a little different here. We've got that half cup of fruit or vegetable, good to go there. Chicken nuggets, again, it's got 2 full components in it, so that is a reimbursable meal right there. And then we've got the milk. So we've got a half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So we've got a reimbursable meal. Okay, so what if a student took a half cup of sliced peaches, a half cup of mashed potatoes, a quarter cup of broccoli, and a dinner roll? So they took almost all, I think they took all of our fruit and vegetable options here. So first, again, we're looking for that half cup of fruit or vegetable. We've got it in the peaches. Now remember, they need a full component of fruit or vegetable if they're going to add those in addition to that half cup requirement. So they've got a half cup of mashed potatoes and a quarter cup of broccoli. That equals 3/4 cup. And remember, that's our daily minimum for K through 8. So there's a full component there. We've got a full component of vegetables. And then our dinner roll is 1 ounce equivalent grains. So again, another full component there. So that's a reimbursable meal. So let's make it a little more tricky and advance to 9 through 12. So basically the same menu, but we had to add a few, increase our serving sizes and then add a fruit option. So same thing, we've got chicken nuggets at 2 ounce equivalent meat, 1 grain, dinner roll at 1 grain. So together with the chicken nuggets and the dinner roll, we need our 2 ounce of grains for the day. We've got a half cup of mashed potatoes. Broccoli is now at a half cup, so we've met our 1 cup of vegetable. And then we've got our sliced peaches at a half cup and 1 orange, which would credit as a half cup. So we've got our 1 cup of fruit. And then milk, we've got that at 1 cup. So our menu meets meal pattern requirements. Now we'll see if students are selecting reimbursable meals. So if we had a half cup of sliced peaches and chicken nuggets and a dinner roll, this would be a reimbursable meal. So again, we're looking for that half cup of fruit or vegetable. And then we've got chicken nuggets. So the chicken nuggets give us a full component of meat alternate. It's not quite a full component of grains though, but because they added the dinner roll, so we've got 1 ounce from the dinner roll and 1 ounce from the chicken nuggets, that gives us a full component of grains. So that's a reimbursable meal. What if we had a half cup of mashed potatoes and chicken nuggets and milk? So again, got the half cup fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component of meat from the chicken nuggets, not a full component of grains though. They would have had to pair it with the dinner roll to get the full component of grains, but they've got the full component of milk. So there we go. We've got 3 components with the half cup of fruit or vegetable. All right, we'll do one more. So we have 1 fresh orange, a half cup of mashed potatoes, a half cup of broccoli, a dinner roll, and milk. So again, this one chose quite a few fruits and vegetables. So the orange, 1 whole orange is going to credit as a half cup of fruit. So we've got that half cup fruit or vegetable. We took a half cup of mashed potatoes and a half cup of broccoli. Remember, the minimum daily vegetable serving for 9 through 12 is 1 cup. So we've got a full component of vegetables. The dinner roll is only crediting, remember, as 1 ounce equivalent of grains. So that's not a full component. They would have had to take 2 dinner rolls or paired it with the chicken nuggets to get that full component of grains. So that's not counting towards our components, but they've got the full component of milk. So we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got a reimbursable meal. So now it gets a little more tricky. We've got some pictures of whether meals are reimbursable. So here's what we've got on the menu today. We've got an orange that credits as a half cup of fruit, carrots, and this is a half cup, rice, 1 ounce equivalent grains. The enchilada is 2 ounces meat alternate and 1 ounce grains, and then milk at 8 fluid ounces. So is this meal reimbursable for K through 8? So for each of these, we'll talk about K through 8 and then 9 through 12. And the answer is yes. They took everything on our menu. This meal is reimbursable. 9 through 12, also reimbursable because they took everything. They've got the half cup of fruit or vegetable and at least 2 other full components. So would this meal be reimbursable? For K through 8, it would not be reimbursable because they don't have that half cup of fruit or vegetable. So my advice is always look for that half cup of fruit or vegetable first. If we don't see that, then the tray is not reimbursable. They've got 2 other full components, but they need that half cup of fruit or vegetable. And same thing for 9 through 12. All right, is this meal reimbursable? So we've got the corn at a half cup, so check there. The roll is 1 ounce equivalent grains, so for K through 8, that's a full component. And then the milk is 8 fluid ounces, so there's another full component. So we've got half cup fruit or vegetable and then 2 full components. Now for 9 through 12, is this meal reimbursable? It is not, and the problem is that roll at 1 ounce equivalent grains. So we've got the half cup fruit or vegetable and then 1 full component from the milk, but we're going to need an additional 1 ounce equivalent of grains to get our grain up to 1 full component. So the student would either need to add rice or get a second dinner roll to get us up to 2 ounce equivalent grains for 9 through 12. All right, is this meal reimbursable? So for K through 8, we've got the half cup of fruit from our orange, And then we've got corn at a 1/2 cup. We've got a roll at 1 ounce equivalent grains, so there's a full component, and then milk at 8 fluid ounces. So we've got 3 additional components here with our 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable, so that's reimbursable. Now for 9 through 12, would it be reimbursable? Again, we've got a 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable with either the corn or the orange. And we've got a full component from the milk, but the grain component, again, is not the full 2 ounce equivalence that's required. So they would need to, again, go get rice or get another dinner roll to get us up to the 2 ounce equivalence. And same thing, if we were going to count the orange or the corn as a full component, they're both only a 1/2 cup. So we would want the student to go back to get another 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable if we wanted to count that as a full component. All right, is this meal reimbursable? For K through 8, let's go through. We have the 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable from the orange. The corn is at a 1/2 cup, and then the roll is 1 ounce equivalent. So we've got our orange can be a full component of fruit. And then our roll can be 1 ounce equivalent of grains. That's a full component of grains. So then the 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable is coming from the corn, excuse me. So we got a 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable, a full component of fruit at a 1/2 cup, and then a full component of grains at 1 ounce. So that is reimbursable for K through 8. Now for 9 through 12, would it be reimbursable? It would not be, because either the corn or the orange would meet the 1/2 cup requirement for fruits or vegetables. However, the corn does not meet the component requirement of 1 cup, and the dinner roll is only 1 ounce equivalent. So this isn't a full component. Our roll isn't a full component because it's only 1 ounce equivalent. And then our orange isn't a full component because it's only a 1/2 cup. And our corn isn't a full component because it's only a 1/2 cup. So they would need to go back. Sorry, I lost my place in the slides. So they need to go back and either get additional fruit, additional vegetable, or they're also gonna have to get additional grains. Okay, so now just looking at this tray, does it look reimbursable? Remember we said the first thing we're going to look for is that required 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable. And there is no fruit or vegetable on this tray, so it's not going to be reimbursable for K through 8 or 9 through 12. They've got lots of components on here. They've got milk, grains, and meat alternate, but they don't have that required fruit or vegetable. Okay, is this meal reimbursable? So we've got the 1/2 cup fruit or vegetable from the orange. We've got a full component from the milk. And then our enchilada is 2 ounces meat alternate, so that's a full component. And then we've got 1 ounce of grains and 1 ounce of grains from the enchilada. So 1 ounce from each, the grains and the enchilada. So that's going to be reimbursable for K through 8 and for 9 through 12. Because we've got a full component of milk, full component of meat alternate, and a full component of grains. So they've got 3 additional components. What about this tray? Yes, it is reimbursable for K through 8 and 9 through 12. We've got that 1/2 cup of fruit or vegetable from the orange. Then we've got a full component from milk, full component of meat in the enchilada, and a full component of grains for both K through 8 and 9 through 12. And then we've got a 1/2 cup of rice, or corn, excuse me. All right, what about this tray? Is this reimbursable? Right away, our red flag is that they've only got 2 little carrots on here. and that is definitely not a half cup of fruit or vegetable. So they've got a full component of milk, and they've got a full component of meat alternate in the enchilada, but they don't have that half cup of fruit or vegetable. So they're going to have to go back to get more carrots or maybe get an orange, and then it would be reimbursable. Okay, so they went back, they made a fix. Is this meal reimbursable? Yes, it is, because they've got the half cup of fruit or vegetable. And if we're thinking K through 8, they've got one full component from the milk. They've got 2 ounces of meat alternate in here from the enchilada, and 1 ounce of grains. So they've got 1, 2, 3 additional components. For 9 through 12, same thing. We've got a half cup of fruit or vegetable, full component from the milk, full component of meat alternate, and then they've got that 1 ounce equivalent grains. So that's technically not a full component, since the minimum daily is 2 ounce equivalents of grains for 9 through 12. But regardless, they've already got 2 full components. So the grain is kind of an extra component. Okay, is this meal reimbursable? So first let's focus on K through 8. They've got the half cup of fruit or vegetable from the carrots, so we're good to go there. And then our enchilada, remember it is 2 ounce equivalents meat alternate and 1 ounce equivalent grains. So for K through 8, our daily minimum is 1 ounce of grains and 1 ounce of meat alternate. So we've got both of those covered in this enchilada, so this meal is reimbursable. We've got the half cup fruit or vegetable and then 2 full components from the enchilada. Now for 9 through 12, is it reimbursable? Remember that our daily grains requirement is 2 ounce equivalents, and this enchilada is only giving us 1 ounce equivalent. So this meal is not reimbursable because that tortilla is only 1 ounce equivalent, and they would need 2 ounces to credit it as a full component. So to fix this, the student could go back and get a serving of rice, and that would bump us up to 2 ounce equivalents grains. All right, and is this meal reimbursable? So basically, this is what the student came back with when they fixed their tray, that 9 through 12 student. So now they've got the half cup fruit or vegetable from carrots, 2 ounces of meat alternate in the enchilada, and then when we combine the enchilada with the rice, we've got 2 ounces of grains. So that meal is reimbursable. All right, and our final one in this section is this meal reimbursable. So we've got the half cup fruit or vegetable from corn, and then the milk is an easy one. There's a full component of milk. And then the enchilada, remember, is 2 ounce equivalents meats and 1 grain. So for K through 8, that's definitely reimbursable because we've got the half cup and then 2 full components. We've actually got 3 additional full components with the milk, the meat, and the grains. For high school, it's also reimbursable. We've just got only 2 full components. So we've got the half cup of corn, full component from the milk, and then a full component of meat. Because remember, the enchilada is only crediting 1 ounce of grains. So that's not a full component. So that was some good practice. I think that's helpful to see real life pictures and kind of think about scenarios, because I'm sure, especially if you've worked point of service or point of sale, you've seen those types of meals come through and you've had to decide whether the student should go back or not. And it's really helpful if you're able to communicate to them what they need in addition to what they have on their tray. So how they could easily fix it to make it a reimbursable meal. And that's why it's so important that we conduct offer versus serve training annually with all our staff, because it can be confusing. So now we're going to talk about communicating the reimbursable meal. So like we said, we want to communicate it to our staff, and then we want to communicate it to our students. Because your students like to make choices about the food they consume, and adding options in the menu can improve their customer satisfaction and increase participation. But when choices are presented, it's important to present the menu items in a manner that encourages selection of a full meal. And it's also important to communicate the components of a reimbursable meal to both your staff and your students. So to motivate student selection of fruits and vegetables, you should attractively present the fruits and vegetable options in several places throughout the serving area. So you could have fresh fruit, dried fruit, or juice options at the point of sale to give the cashier ready access to complete a student meal. So if a student came through and they didn't have that required half cup of fruit or vegetable, if you had, a basket of juice options or fresh fruit options that they could select from, they could easily get that half cup fruit or vegetable requirement. Garden bars are also a good way to offer students a variety of fruits and vegetables to make it easy for them to self-serve required amounts. And if the fruits and vegetables are all presented in half cup increments, it's simple for students to obtain the half cup portion. If the portion sizes are presented in quarter cup portions on a self-serve garden bar, you'd want to make signage available that makes it clear that 2 scoops are required to equal the half cup. So it's really easy for students to get that half cup requirement if you've got it in a half cup serving size. Since component contributions for mixed component dishes are not always obvious, finding ways to effectively share this information can be challenging. And it's obvious on some main dishes, such as a hamburger, that one portion provides both meats and grains. But other main dishes, like casseroles, might require further communication to prompt students to select a full meal. So you'll want to make it simple for students to select full components of meat alternate and grains by bundling the menu items together or by strategically placing certain menu items near other menu items. For example, you could bundle chicken nuggets with a dinner roll in a food boat, or you could include croutons with a chef salad served in a clamshell, or you could portion breadsticks next to the pasta with meat sauce. So if we bundle that meat alternate and that grain together, it's really easy to automatically have the students take 2 full components. The use of detailed production records is essential to the planning, preparation, and service of program meals. And for your program staff, internal communication on how each menu item contributes to the reimbursable meal can occur through the food production records. And your food production records can identify component contributions, portion sizes, and appropriate serving utensils to use for service. Food production records can also help staff identify a portion size count for hard-to-scoop items such as carrots and celery sticks. So not only are your production records a good tool for communicating serving sizes and component contributions, but you could also add notes for those hard-to-scoop items, like your carrots. For example, you could say 6 carrot sticks equals a half cup. So then it's easy for your staff. They don't have to do any digging or guessing as to whether it credits as a half cup. They've got it right there on the production record to remind them. For student customers, menu signage is a tool that can be used to communicate what menu items can comprise a full reimbursable meal. And since the component contribution for mixed component dishes, such as breaded meats and casseroles, is not always obvious, signage can help student customers make appropriate selections. Your menu signage must be posted at the start of each service line, and the signage should indicate the minimum component selections required for the meal to be reimbursable. A half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So you want that menu, that signage, to list what is available for the students to select, your entire menu. But then it also should indicate the minimum requirements that they must take. So it needs to say something like, students must take a half cup fruit or vegetable plus 2 other full components. And many districts in Kansas use the Healthy Kansas plate posters, and these can be used to write in menu items that fit into each component section of the plate. And the menu items can be identified in writing or through images taped on the poster. So we've seen lots of different variations of this poster. Most of the time what I see is staff is writing the menu item in each section each day, and then they erase it at the end of meal service, and they'll write the following day's menu. So for example, you might see pizza listed in the grains and protein section, an apple listed in the fruit section, and broccoli listed in the vegetable section, and then they'll put milk choice, or maybe the different milk choices they have available that day in the dairy section. So here's an example where they've used a backdrop. They've used the Healthy Kansas plate poster as a backdrop for these overlays. So they developed overlays for their cycle menu, and then the overlays fit perfectly in the squares, or not in the squares, in the shapes of the Healthy Kansas plate poster. So they just they attach those overlays each day with the menu items. And you'll see then they've got the full menu listed over here. You could also promote your menus on social media or on Facebook pages, and the photo of an actual full reimbursable meal could be posted on the district website or Facebook page, and students and parents could pull this up daily to determine what the menu is for the day and see exactly what a full meal would look like. So if a student took every item available to them, you can see it fills up their tray, and this is what a full menu would look like. Another option, another example, this is from the Blue Valley District, and they use plastic peel-off stickers on their self-serve bars to communicate components to students for each menu item. So basically, they would put the red triangle over the fruit options for the day, and the purple triangle over the protein options for the day, the meat alternate group. Lawrence Public Schools uses menu cards for each item designating components, and then Shawnee Mission Public Schools bundles the meat alternate and grains in pre-portioned boats, so it's easy for students to select those two components. So those are just some examples of how you can communicate that reimbursable meal to students. At minimum, you are required to post the full menu with their components, and then what the students must take to select a reimbursable meal. So it must state somewhere, if you're offer versus serve, that students have to take a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 other full components. So adding choices to the daily and weekly menus may include offering alternate meal options. And alternate meals must also meet minimum daily and weekly component requirements. And when you're offering alternate meals in the program, it's important to be able to recognize and communicate what comprises a reimbursable meal to both your staff and your student customers. So just like we talked about and worked on recognizing a reimbursable meal, we've also got to recognize your alternate meals and then communicate those to your staff and students. Your alternate meals have to meet those same daily and weekly minimum requirements for meats and grains, vegetable subgroups, and fruit. And an 8-ounce portion of liquid milk must also be offered at all of these meals. And to assure that alternate meals meet the weekly minimum requirements for meat alternate and grains, your daily meal combinations offered should have similar component contributions. For example, if the chicken and noodles with a hot roll menu provides 2-ounce equivalents of meat alternate and 2-ounce equivalent grains, both the deli sandwich option and the peanut butter sandwich with a cheese stick option offered on the same day should also provide 2-ounce equivalents meat alternate and ounce equivalent grains. So you want your alternate meals to reflect, your main meal. So if your main meal has 2 meat alternate and 2 grain, your alternate meals should also have 2 meat and 2 grain. To assure that the minimum amount of fruits and vegetables offered meet daily and weekly minimums for all, you'll want to provide the same fruit and vegetable side dishes for all main dish options. So this ensures that regardless of which menu option they choose, they're going to meet their daily and their weekly fruit, vegetable, and vegetable subgroups. And the tricky one is the vegetable subgroups. You just want to make sure that regardless of what they choose, they're going to meet those weekly requirements. So that's why we recommend offering the same side dishes, fruit and vegetable side dishes, for all of your main dish options. And again, for program staff, food production records can serve as an internal communication on how each meal combination contributes to a reimbursable meal. Production records that include component contributions for all menu items make it clear to program staff how each menu item contributes to a full meal. So in this sample food production record shown, all the meat alternate choices are planned to include a 2-ounce equivalent grain choice to make the daily contribution amounts consistent. So if you see here, this district is offering students can either have a hamburger on a bun, chicken nuggets with a roll, chili with 2 rolls, a deli sandwich, or a chef salad with 2 rolls. So if we move over to our component contributions, you'll see that each of these options, all 5 of them, are contributing 2 meats and 2 grains. So they all match. So regardless of what they choose, they're going to meet both the daily and the weekly requirements. And then they've got the same side dishes, same side fruits and vegetables, regardless of what they choose. So if they choose a hamburger, chicken nugget, chili, deli sandwich, or chef salad, they have access to the fries, carrot sticks, orange, and canned fruit. Alternate meals have to be communicated to student customers at the beginning of the serving line and have to indicate how each option can meet the component requirements. Alternate meals can be communicated on a chart that identifies components, like this one on the slide, or they can be written on a large Healthy Kansas plate poster along with the mainline item, mainline meal. And alternate meals could also be written separately on a smaller Healthy Kansas plate poster. Again, it's just up to you how you are going to communicate these meals to students, but they do have to know what alternate meals are available. So if we look at this option for communicating, you'll see here we've got the main dish item is listed in the first column, and then it breaks it down into each of the 5 components. So you'll see that the meat alternate and the grains are different for each of these menu items, but then they offer the same side dishes regardless of what a student selected. So even if they chose the chef salad, they're still going to have access to oven fries and carrot sticks, fresh fruit and canned fruit, and milk if they want those items. Options in a school nutrition program can include specialty meal stations, and specialty meal stations must provide all 5 of the required components or include access to a fruit and vegetable bar. So again, even if you've got a specialty meal station, it's still got to meet those daily and weekly requirements. And to help identify reimbursable meals from specialty meal stations and food bars, menu planners must provide food component information for each item along with the minimum serving sizes. The menu planner must also indicate which foods and combinations of foods the student may choose to select a reimbursable meal. So in these next few examples, we've got an Italian food station, Mexican, pizza by the slice, Asian food station, and a grab-and-go station. So here's our sample production record, and you'll see that each menu item is listed individually with component contributions designated by the station number. So the station number is indicated by numbers here in this first column. In this case, the fruit and vegetable bar is listed on one line in the production record and represents a fruit and vegetable bar recipe. So all of these lines, they've got their separate specialty lines, and then somewhere in the middle, they've got a fruit and vegetable bar. And this line in the production record is tied to a recipe. So if we looked at that recipe, we'd see what they were actually serving to meet the dark green, red, orange, legumes, starchy, and other vegetable amounts. So there's a recipe associated with this line of the production record. You could also choose to have a separate production sheet for the fruit and vegetable bar to track amounts of each ingredient selected and left over. So if you wanted to actually list out, broccoli and spinach, carrots and tomatoes with the amounts you prepared and amounts left over, then you could list those on a separate production record. But this district here has chosen to use a recipe with that information, and then you'll see they've got each of the lines. So here we've got our Italian line is number 1, and they have access to meat sauce, Alfredo sauce, pasta, and a cheese breadstick. Then we've got the Mexican line, the pizza line, the Asian line, and then the grab-and-go line. So they have managed to put all of their lines on one production record, and then they just indicated which line it was with a number. The component contributions for your specialty meal stations can also be communicated on a chart. And in this sample chart, the meat alternate and the grain components are provided at each specialty station, and then the fruit and vegetables are offered through a self-service garden bar. So kind of similar to that last one we looked at, where the meats and grains were different for each of the options. So we've got each of our stations here in the first column, the meats that are available at each station, the grain component available at each station, and then you'll see, like I said, they're going to meet somewhere in the middle, and there's a garden bar where they have access to all of these fruits and vegetables, and then they've got access to the milk cooler as well. And like we mentioned, this is really important because we want to make sure that regardless of if they go to the pizza station every single day, they're going to have access to all of those vegetable subgroups. A salad bar can be planned to provide a full reimbursable meal, and to be reimbursable, a salad bar meal must meet the same meal pattern requirements as other meals served. So again, same thing as we said before, salad bar meal has to meet those daily and weekly requirements. They must provide all 5 components and portions that meet daily and weekly minimums. And when we're planning a salad bar meal station, we want to use food production records as a tool to communicate component contributions to our staff. If possible, we'll want to set up the salad bar meal station as a separate line. So just like with, our Italian line we talked about, or our Mexican line, we would want the salad bar option to be a separate line. However, if the salad bar option is combined with a fruit and vegetable bar, such as a garden bar, we'd want to consider serving the meat alternate and the grains for that salad bar meal from the serving line and offering the fruit and vegetable components on the garden bar. So if a student wanted the salad bar meal, they would come to the line, get their meat and their grain, and then they'd go to the salad bar to comprise the actual salad, the fruits and the vegetables. And this would allow all students to have access to a variety of fruits and vegetables, not just the students selecting the salad bar. And while we're talking about salad bars versus garden bars, we do have a nice comparison to maybe help you understand the difference between a garden bar and a salad bar meal station. So here we've got salad bar on the left. And a salad bar meal is typically separate from the serving line, like we said. It provides all components and amounts required to meet daily and weekly requirements for students to self-serve. So that salad bar meal is going to be the full meal. So it needs to provide our daily requirement and our weekly requirements of meats, grains, fruits, vegetables, and milk. It's a separate menu from the main menu. So it's like an alternate entree, alternate menu choice. And it has to provide all of the vegetable subgroups in amounts needed to meet the weekly minimums. And it must be before the point of service or supervised by an adult trained to recognize reimbursable meals. And the reason for this is we want to make sure when students go through that salad bar meal line that they have a reimbursable meal. So that's why it needs to be before the point of service. So we can check that they have at least a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 other components. Now, a garden fruit and vegetable bar is a little different. This is typically located close to the serving line, and it is the place where students can self-serve fruits and vegetables and all the students can have access to them to complete their meal. So here's an example. So the students would go through the serving line, get their main item and maybe a hot vegetable. Then all students, regardless of if they went to a different line, have access to this fruit and vegetable bar where they can load up on different fruits and vegetables to maybe get that half cup of fruit or vegetable requirement or extras if they wish. It would be included in the main menu. So these would basically be considered side dishes on your menu. And they may provide the vegetable subgroups and amounts needed to meet weekly requirements. So whatever you have on that fruit and vegetable bar, you can count that towards meeting your weekly requirements for vegetable subgroups. And just like our salad bar, it must be before the point of service or supervised by an adult trained to recognize reimbursable meals. And the reason this is important, again, is because we want students to have a reimbursable meal. And if it were after the point of service, it'd be a lot more difficult to make sure students had that half cup of fruit or vegetable requirement. So if they just went through the serving line, the hot food items, they may not have that half cup of fruit or vegetable. So if the garden bar is before our point of service, that's an easy way for students to load up on fruits and vegetables and get that requirement. So again, we talked about how, in addition to providing all 5 components in proper portions, salad bar meals must also provide the required vegetable subgroups over the course of the week. And fluid milk selections must be offered near the salad bar meal station to give students easy access to all the components required to complete their salad bar meal. So that salad bar meal, they have to have access to fruits, vegetables, meat alternate, grains, and fluid milk every single day. Portion sizes that provide 1 ounce equivalent for various meat alternates from a salad bar meal station can vary. And to work through portioning challenges, you'll want to use product formulation statements or child nutrition labels to determine the amount to credit as 1 meat alternate. And during service, meat alternates can be pre-portioned in portion cups on the salad bar meal station. In a self-portioning style of service, program staff can identify and use the serving utensils that best delivers the correct amount needed to deliver a 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. So based on the product that you're using for meat alternate, it's going to depend how much in weight or how much of that item you're going to need to credit as 1 meat alternate. So you'll see we can't just portion out 1 ounce of ham and 1 ounce of turkey and say that that's 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. These products vary. We'd actually need to portion out 1.22 ounces of ham and 1.43 ounces of turkey ham, or look at that product formulation statement or CN label to determine how much is needed to credit as 1 ounce equivalent of meat alternate. And then cheese is easy. It'd be 1 ounce, 1/4 cup of cottage cheese, 4 ounces of yogurt, 2.2 ounces of tofu, 1/4 cup of beans, half an egg, 1.3 ounces of canned tuna, or 1 ounce of nuts and seeds. So again, it's going to depend on what products you have on that salad bar. That will determine how much you need to pre-portion out for students to have access to 1 meat alternate. For the grains, your portion sizes that provide 1 ounce equivalent for various grains on a salad bar meal station can also vary depending on the product. So to work through portioning challenges, your ounce equivalents can be determined using product weight, recipe component calculations, or a product formulation statement from the manufacturer. And again, just remember that 50% or more of those grains credited on a weekly basis must be whole grain rich. A 1 ounce equivalent of whole grains could be provided in lots of different ways. You could provide a 1 ounce roll, breadstick, bread slice, or a pita, 0.8 ounces of crackers, 0.8 ounces of croutons, 2 ounces of quick bread or a muffin, and a half cup of cooked pasta. So all of those options on the slide would credit as 1 grain bread. And as with the meat alternate, grains can be pre-portioned by staff, or they program staff can use the serving utensil that best delivers the correct amount needed to deliver a 1 ounce equivalent of grains. So you'd know that if you had a half cup serving utensil for that cooked pasta, then if a student took a half cup, they'd have 1 ounce equivalent of grains. Signs, menus, and charts on a salad bar meal station can be used to assist your student customers in selecting the correct amount of food to make a reimbursable meal. And your portion sizes must be managed to stay within dietary specifications for the week. So that's why it's really helpful to pre-portion out your meats and your grains, because if students have unlimited access to ham or turkey or cottage cheese or cheese, then that's going to add to those dietary specifications for the week. So that might affect your calories or your sodium or your saturated fat levels. So that's just another thing to consider. The Pick-2 method of communicating full components to a 9 through 12 age grade group is shown on the slide. So students have to pick 2 of these components, because remember, they have to take a half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. So they've got to pick either any combination of 2 of these. 2 servings of meat alternate, 2 servings of whole grain, 2 half cup servings of vegetables, 2 half cup servings of fruit, or a carton of milk. So that's why it's called the Pick-2 option, because they can select 2 of these components. So just like we did with our normal meals, now we're going to go through some scenarios regarding whether meals are reimbursable for a salad bar meal station. So our first scenario, and again, we're going to go through K through 8 and 9 through 12 for each of these. So here we've got 1 cup of leafy green lettuce and 8 fluid ounces of milk. So is this meal reimbursable for K through 8? We've got our half cup of fruit or vegetable from the leafy greens, because remember, leafy greens are going to credit as half their volume. So although this is 1 cup, it only credits as a half cup. So we've got that one, but we only have 1 additional component from the milk. There's nothing else. So this is not reimbursable for K through 8. For 9 through 12, same thing. We've got the half cup fruit or vegetable, but there's only 1 additional component. So they need to go back to get 1 more full component. What about this tray? So we've got 1 cup of leafy green lettuce, 1 cup of sliced peaches, and 8 fluid ounces of milk. So for K through 8, is this meal reimbursable? So again, 1 cup of leafy lettuce is going to credit as a half cup. So we've got our half cup of fruit or vegetable there. We've got 1 cup of sliced peaches. So for K through 8, that exceeds the daily minimum for fruit. So we've definitely got a full component there of fruit. And then milk is easy. We've got a full component of milk there. So this is reimbursable because we've got half cup and then 2 additional components. Now for 9 through 12, is this reimbursable? Because the peaches are a full cup, we've got 1 cup of fruit, this tray is reimbursable. And that's because, remember, our daily minimum of fruit for 9 through 12 is 1 cup. So because they took a full component of fruit and then they've got another full component of milk, this is reimbursable. All right, what about this tray? For K through 8, is it reimbursable? So this is 1 cup of leafy green lettuce and 1 cup of sliced peaches. So we've got a half cup of vegetables here and then 1 full component of fruit, actually more than a full component. This is not reimbursable because although we have a full component of fruit, we don't have that 3rd component. So we've got the half cup of fruit or vegetable, 1 full component here, but we need another one. We need a 3rd full component. Now for 9 through 12, is it reimbursable? No, it is not. Same thing. Got the half cup fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component of fruit because that is 1 cup, but we need a third component. So they're going to need to go back and get something else. Okay, what about this tray? So this is 2 ounce equivalents of meat alternate from diced turkey. So in this little container, we've got 2 ounce equivalents of turkey, meat alternate. We've got a few carrots, probably about 1/4 of a cup. And then this is a breadstick that credits as 2 ounce equivalents of grains. So for K through 8, is this reimbursable? Remember, we want to look for that half cup of fruit or vegetable first. These are, that's only 1/4 cup of carrots. That's definitely not a half cup. So this definitely isn't reimbursable solely because we don't have that half cup of fruit or vegetable. So we'll have to send them back and get more fruit or vegetable. And then 9 through 12, same thing. They've got to have that half cup of fruit or vegetable, and they don't have that, so we'll have to send them back. All right, what about this tray? So we've got 2 ounces of meat alternate from the turkey, 1 cup of sliced peaches, 8 ounces of milk, and 1 cup of salad greens. So we're going to credit our salad as a half cup. That'll be our half cup of fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component of fruit, a full component of meat alternate, and a full component of milk. So they went above and beyond what's required. They took 3 additional components, so that is a reimbursable meal for K through 8. And then same thing for 9 through 12. Got the half cup fruit or vegetable, a full component of fruit, full component of meat alternate, because that is 2 ounce equivalents of meat, and then 1 cup of milk. Okay, what about this tray? So these are all different vegetables, and they're likely a half cup total. So all we've got on this tray is a half cup of vegetables. Is it reimbursable for K through 8? It is not, because they've got that half cup of fruit or vegetable that we need, but there's no other components. All that we have on this tray is vegetables, so that's just 1 component. Same thing with 9 through 12. All we've got represented on the tray is 1 component, our half cup of vegetable. We're going to need 2 additional full components. All right, what about this tray? So we have got small portions of vegetables, and together these are likely a half cup total. So all of those vegetables are a half cup. And then we've got 2 ounce equivalents of grains from this breadstick, and then 8 fluid ounces of milk. So let's focus on our K through 8. Remember, first thing we're looking for is that half cup fruit or vegetable. We've got that with these various assortments of vegetables. So check that off our list, half cup fruit or vegetable. Milk is easy, that's 1 full component, so check that off. And then this is 2 ounce equivalents of grains. For K through 8, we just need 1 ounce equivalent to meet our daily minimum. So there we go, we've got a full component. Got the half cup plus 2 other full components. Now for 9 through 12, is it reimbursable? Oh my goodness, off place again. Okay, 9 through 12. Half cup of fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component from milk, and then we've got a full component of grains. Because this breadstick is crediting as 2 ounce equivalents of grains. If this breadstick were only 1 ounce equivalent, this would not be a reimbursable meal because that would not be a full component of grains. But it is 2 ounce equivalents, so for 9 through 12, that meets the minimum daily amount. So we're good to go. What about this tray? Basically the same thing as before, but we took that milk away. So we've got the half cup of vegetable and then the 2 ounce equivalent breadstick. So for K through 8, is this reimbursable? It is not. We've got the half cup fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component from the grains, but we need another component. We need our 3rd full component. What about 9 through 12? Same thing here. It's not reimbursable because we need those 2 additional full components. So we've got the half cup fruit or vegetable. We've got a full component of grains, but we need something else. So we could send them back to get the milk, maybe the diced turkey. Those would all work. Okay, what about this tray? So this is 1 cup of salad greens, and then they've got an additional half cup of raw vegetables. So up here we've got more vegetables at a half cup. Our breadstick at 2 ounce equivalent grains, and then 2 ounce equivalent of turkey, meat alternate there, and then a full component of milk. So for K through 8, would this be reimbursable? So first thing we're going to check is that half cup of vegetable. We've got that. We can count either these raw vegetables or our salad greens here. And then we need 2 full components. Breadstick, that's a full component of grains. Milk, that's a full component. Or turkey, that's a full component of meat alternate. So we've got half cup of vegetable plus 3 other full components, and they took some additional vegetables. What about for 9 through 12? Okay, so we've got the half cup of vegetable. We're good to go there. Our breadstick is 2 ounces of grain, so that's a full component. Milk, that's a full component. We've got a reimbursable meal. And then in addition to that, they took a full component of meat alternate. So we're good to go there. All right, what about this tray? Again, we've got a cup of salad greens, additional half cup of raw vegetables, 2 ounces of grains from our breadstick, and 2 ounces of meat alternate from our turkey. So for K through 8, would this be reimbursable? Yes, it is. We've got a half cup of vegetable from our salad greens or from these raw vegetables up here. Either one would count. And then we've got a full component of grains, more than a full component for K through 8 since they just need 1 ounce equivalent. And then more than a full component of meat alternate because we've got 2 ounce equivalents of turkey there. Now for 9 through 12, it is also reimbursable because again we've got the half cup fruit or vegetable, full component of grains because this is 2 ounce equivalents, and full component of meat because that's 2 ounce equivalents. All right, what about this tray? So it contains 1 cup of salad greens. So under here we have 1 cup of salad greens and then an additional 1 cup of raw vegetables. So if we combine this at the top and then these toppings on our salad greens, that's an additional 1 cup of raw vegetables. Then we've got 2 ounce equivalents of meat alternate and 2 ounce equivalents of grains. So for K through 8, is this reimbursable? First thing we're checking for is the half cup fruit or vegetable. We've definitely got that covered. They took 1.5 cups of vegetable. And then we need our 2 full components. We've also got that. So we've got at least 1 ounce equivalent of grains and at least 1 ounce equivalent of meats. So we've got half cup, 1, 2 additional components. For 9 through 12, it is also reimbursable because again, we've got more than enough vegetables, and then our grains is a full component at 2 ounces, and our meat is a full component at 2 ounces. Okay, our final one is this tray reimbursable? And that's kind of hard to figure out, I would say. So this tray contains more than 1 cup of salad greens and additional vegetables, along with 2 ounce equivalents grains. So we've got a lot more than 1 cup of salad greens and additional vegetables. So we've got that half cup of vegetables covered. The thing is, it's all vegetables here. However, it's really hard to determine, did you notice there's diced turkey in here? It's really hard to determine if that is actually 2 ounce equivalents of meat alternate. When it was pre-portioned, we knew our staff portioned that into 2 ounce equivalent servings, so we could count that as a full component. But since the student self-served, we would have to think about whether the serving utensil they used was enough to credit this as 2 ounce equivalents. So that's why if it's self-serve and you're not pre-portioning them, you want to make sure the serving utensil is large enough that students are going to take the minimum amount. So we've got 3 components here, or we've got the half cup fruit or vegetable. Check that off our list. We've got 1 full component we know from this breadstick, that's 2-ounce equivalents. We just don't know if this turkey is 2-ounce equivalents for 9 through 12. So this is really just going to depend on what you have written as the portion utensil and how much the student actually took. So just a good example of why it can make your life a lot simpler if we are pre-portioning those meat alternate items and the grains. So in summary, there are many ways that reimbursable lunch meals can be made available to student customers, and to keep interest high and encourage participation in the meal program, we recommend exploring innovative ways to offer lunch meals to students. So whether that be, alternate entree items, which we talked about. If you have the capability, maybe some alternate meal service lines like those Italian and Mexican lines, or a salad bar option if you've got that available. And in all the ways lunch menus are offered in your program, it's important to the meal claiming process to know what comprises a reimbursable lunch meal. It's important that not only is the menu planner aware of how to create a reimbursable meal and make it easy for students to select those reimbursable meals, but super important is the point of service person, or that last server, whoever's monitoring for reimbursable meals, that they know how to recognize a reimbursable meal, because it can be tricky. So trainings like this can be really helpful. As I said at the beginning, this will be posted on our online training portal. And then to encourage selection of a reimbursable meal, it's also important to effectively communicate your lunch options to student customers. So make sure they know what menu options are available, whether that's one main dish or lots of different alternate entrees, that they know how all the options available, and then that they know what they must select to have a reimbursable meal. So that if it's your offer versus serve, they need to have that half cup of fruit or vegetable plus 2 full components. I thank you guys for participating in the class. If you have any questions, you can type them in the chat box, and I'll stay on for a little bit to answer any of those. And then, as we always say, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to your child nutrition and wellness consultant or our Topeka office, and we're happy to help out. We do have a survey that you can take for this class, and I will copy and paste this link in the chat box, and it should take you to it. Otherwise, if you've got your smartphone on you, you can use this QR code and it'll take you straight to the link as well. And these are just helpful for us to know any recommendations you might have in improving our classes or our webinars. So thank you guys for participating.